Hello and welcome to the Road to Autonomy. The Road to Autonomy is brought to you in part by Stantec Generation AV. Stantec Generation AV combines some of the most experienced AV experts in the industry with the resources of a global engineering firm. Stantec Generation AV provides education, consulting, assessment, and guidance to any industry interested in autonomous vehicles. Learn more at stantec.com. Hello and welcome to the Road to Autonomy. I'm your host, Grayson Brulte. On today's episode, we're absolutely honored to welcome Oliver Cameron, Vice President of Product Cruise. Oliver, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Grayson. It's wonderful to be here, finally.
Not finally. We're excited to have you here. You and I have known each other for quite a while. I'm excited to have you here because I'm proud of you.
Oh.
Voyage is now part of Cruise, and you're developing the future at Cruise. You're doing really good for the industry by tweeting all this positive stuff about autonomy and the impact it's having. Oliver, we went for our first ride together in the Voyage autonomous vehicle at the Villages in Orlando in 2019. A lot's changed by then. As I said earlier, Voyage has been acquired by Cruise. Go Team Voyage. Well done on that one. Reflect on the last 4 years on autonomy for me, because a lot's changed since that ride to today.
Absolutely. Firstly, you're too kind. The things we've seen in autonomy over the last few years are a consequence of just an amazing set of people who have been waking up every day to solve these challenges. And once you put enough smart people after that, of course, they're eventually going to solve it. For me, the biggest change that's happened over the last 4 years is that in 2019, everyone in the industry was waking up to answer the question, can we make a car safer than a human? A self-driving car that's safer than a human? And that was the challenge that lots of folks were very divided on, right? There was folks that said it would take decades and decades to do that. There was folks that said it was right around the corner. You had your optimists, you had your pessimists. But for folks that were in AV, that was the question that everyone was waking up every day to answer. And over the course of, a number of years, finally that question was answered. That question for Cruise was answered in November 2021, when we launched fully driverless cars on the streets of San Francisco. And the question that then all Cruise employees woke up every day to answer changed. It was not necessarily, can we build a car safer than a human? It was, can we scale this technology? And that's the phase we're in now. We're in the phase of scaling out self-driving cars, the expansion of the markets that we're in, the improvements in the product. That's the kind of phase that we're in right now. And it takes different skill sets, to answer those questions. It takes different cultures. It's really a very broad, expansive problem to solve. But it's exciting nonetheless.
The thing that is not talked a lot about Cruise, you have a great executive leadership bench. You have Kyle, you have Gil West, you have Rob Grant. You have really great individuals that understand how to scale a business. Gil scaled Delta, and during the oil problem, he bought a refinery, and look where Delta is today, because it comes down to leadership. And that's the same stuff that Gil is helping Kyle and Mary from GM are doing. You guys are really doing a wonderful job in your scaling. But I want to highlight, when you scale, you're bringing joy. Autonomy brings joy. When we went around the villages that day, and they're called villagers. Yes, they're called villagers. And we stopped and talked to these individuals. They were ecstatic about the impact that autonomy would have on their lives. And today, you're operating in San Francisco, Phoenix, and Austin. You're bringing the joy to multiple cities around the United States, and soon to bring the joy to Dubai. What have you learned from the wonderful passengers that have had the Cruise experience? So they call you or email you, hey, this was the coolest thing ever, but could you do this or could you do that? What have you learned from them?
For sure. You're totally right. There's just something about self-driving cars that really sparks this sense of kind of optimism in people. They see this thing, and it's really representative of the future, right? It's one of those things we've all grown up thinking it will happen eventually. And now that it's here, when people finally get to experience it, when they're in the backseat looking at a steering wheel moving itself, they feel this sense of optimism and excitement and joy, and people laugh. People just can't get their minds wrapped around it. So that's for someone building a self-driving product, that's the best possible position to be in. It doesn't make, it's not an easy problem for sure, but it makes it that little bit easier when people's first impressions tend to be that their minds are blown. The challenge for self-driving long-term is that let's assume that everyone that does have their first experience, if we do our job correctly, is going to have their mind blown. Eventually, though, it has to become a useful utility, right? Frankly, self-driving cannot just be this novelty where people are seeing steering wheels moving and they're getting all excited about that. It has to become something that's an absolute utility in their life that they use every single day, multiple times a day, and they love using it over every other alternative that exists out there. So many of the things we hear from customers are about those things. It's, can you make the routes more direct? Can you get me closer to the location where I want to be picked up from? Can you add this feature on the tablets? These are the kinds of things we tend to hear from customers. And it's the right things for us to now invest in because, like I mentioned, we're in this phase of scaling. We have this technology that works, that's out there, that's accumulating significant mileage fully driverlessly. And now we have to deliver a product that people truly love and use in their day-to-day lives. So that's where we spend our time every single day.
Useful utility, I like that. There's a big difference between the utilities today that they just send you a bill and charge you more, but you're becoming useful utility where you're taking that feedback from the passengers. Are you incorporating some of that feedback? You mentioned the tablet or a more direct route as you do new software updates, which are the January 2023 update. Are you incorporating some of that feedback into the product?
Absolutely. So one of the really exciting opportunities about a self-driving car, well, actually, let's think about the experience of a human-driven vehicle, maybe a taxi or a rideshare vehicle. You use their app, you press a button, car shows up in some time frame, and all of that experience up until the car showing up can be measured, right? Uber can measure the ETA. They can measure if the button that you tapped actually did the thing you wanted it to do. They can really quantify and say, did we deliver a good experience there? Once you get in the car, it's actually really tough for these companies to know what happens in the experience, right? They don't know if that driver is a good driver or a bad driver. They don't know if that driver swerved. They don't know if that driver hit the brakes hard because they were distracted. They don't know if the driver was playing music too loud. Like whatever it might be, these human-driven companies have very limited insight as to what exactly happens on a trip. Now, because we have a self-driving car that's powered by software, we actually know every single thing that our software driver is doing on a trip. We know when the AV hits the brakes. We know when the AV accelerates. We know when it turns. Like millisecond by millisecond, we know every single action. So what we do is on every single passenger trip, we quantify this. We say, okay, on this particular trip, was this perfect? Did the AV drive perfectly, like genuinely perfectly, like flawlessly? If the AV did not drive perfectly, what happened? Did we not get as close to the pickup location as we wanted to? Was that lane change perhaps too slow? Whatever it might be, we are able to quantify that. And then bit by bit, we basically reduce those issues over time. And what's really magical about this is this sense of automation that we literally, across every single trip, know every single thing that's happening in our AV from a driving perspective. And that really results in us being able to build a much, much, much better experience. I think a very succinct way of saying it is that the human equivalent is not very consistent. You can have the world's best driver and then the world's worst driver from trip to trip. Our experience is very consistent and it only gets better over time. And that's something that's very special and unique to autonomous vehicles that the human-driven equivalents will just simply never be able to match because of the inconsistency of humans.
Is that how you were able to achieve the 20% smoother ride in the January 2023 update?
Yes, that's a great stat that is exactly born from that metric I mentioned. We quantify comfort and we then build technical improvements to improve comfort. We have deep understanding of where in our technology any comfort degradation is coming from. And then we go and improve it. And then in the next release, we improve it by 20% in this case. And that can take on different shapes. It can take on the shape of, okay, should we more smoothly accelerate down hills or up hills? Should we take that turn a little wider? Should we have hit the brakes a little later in a particular scenario? Whatever it might be, we're able to quantify that. And again, what's really cool about an autonomous vehicle is just the consistency. The common line we all hear, right, in autonomous vehicles is it doesn't get tired, it doesn't get drunk, it doesn't get angry. It's just consistent. It's the same thing every single time. And in fact, it's not just the same thing. It just gets better over time. And that's just powerful. And things like this are things that customers perceive We've had customers who have been riding with us since February 2022, so close to a year now, and they've felt the improvements. They tell us about this. They tell us about the comfort improvements, the pickup and drop off improvements, the app improvements, the tablet, the CS improvements, all this sort of stuff.
You're doing the opposite of what a typical transportation company does. You start day one, it's a great experience, then it goes downhill from there because they don't invest in their product. You're doing the complete opposite.
Exactly. That is the fundamental shift here. You nailed it. That's exactly what this is. Typically, transportation services, when they scale, get worse, right? And we've seen that with the ride-sharing companies, that it's just very difficult to scale these things. But self-driving cars actually benefit from scale because as you gather and garner more data, you simply have more information to improve your product. And that data is directly fed back into the machine, as it were, to improve the product. And we see this all the time. As we expand to new markets, it doesn't just mean that we have greater scale. It means that our existing markets get better because our AVs are exposed to more information from more diverse locations. So yeah, you nailed it. That's exactly the right way to think of it.
Your expansion is fascinating. I use the term like Superman. You're going at the speed of sound. You expanded roughly 90 days. It took you to go fully driverless operations in 2 cities, not one, but 2 cities, Austin and Phoenix. How is that accomplished in such a short period of time? Do you have Superman working for Cruise that you haven't publicly announced?
We don't. We are, the whole team is incredibly talented. But what I would say is that the question that now needs to be answered, as I mentioned at the beginning, is can this stuff scale? And this is, let's be honest, this is like an existential question, right? If this technology could not scale, it is nothing more than a fancy technology demo. So the question that Cruise and others in AV has to answer is, can this stuff scale? And in and around, what was it, like September last year, there was a challenge set for our team. And this challenge was to take our technology, our fully driverless technology, and take it to a market we had never seen before in less than 90 days. And we already had a presence in Phoenix. We didn't have driverless cars in Phoenix. We had supervised cars in Phoenix. But we wanted to bring our technology there. But we also wanted to bring it to a brand new place we'd never seen, and that was Austin. Just a wonderful ride-hail market and delivery market. So we found it to be, a great next place to go. So this was really a test of how generalizable is our self-driving technology. Because if our technology was not generalizable, well, frankly, there is no chance of us deploying driverless cars in Austin in less than 90 days, right? Just no chance at all. You'd have to rethink a whole bunch. You'd have to change all these potentially hard-coded rules if that was how you built your stack, and that would take far more than 90 days. But in fact, we've been building our technology to be generalizable. And in fact, we've been building it to be generalizable and stress tested by the hardest possible environments, in our case, San Francisco. So in less than 90 days, we were able to deploy operations to Austin to gather data from that location, find things that typically are quite unique about Austin versus places we've driven before, and then feed that data into something we call the continuous learning machine, plus a whole bunch of other technologies. And through that process, we're able to retrain our models. These are all machine learned models under the hood. And to then deploy a version of our software that works just as good as it does in San Francisco, in Austin, and Phoenix. And this proved that we have a generalizable technology that can scale. Because this wasn't a demo, this was, okay, you're launching driverless cars serving customers as well in these locations. So it's an even harder challenge than just like deliver a fun video or a demo. But we did it. We did this at the end of December, launched driverless operations in both of those markets, welcomed our first customers, our first paying customers into those regions. And it's been wonderful. And we're going to be expanding even more this year.
I'm excited to see your expansion. I had the honor of talking to Jason Fisher from GM about a great gentleman. He's been on the podcast. Thanks for coming on, Jason, about the origin. From an engineering perspective, it's really incredible how GM is engineering a world-class vehicle, is, in the words of Gil West, will act like a fuselage, where you'll change the seats, you'll change the tires, and the vehicle will go a million miles. As Cruise expands into new cities, you're in Austin, you're in Phoenix, and you're in San Francisco. As you go to, say, city A, B, and C, eventually, will the Cruise origin scale with you when it is production ready?
Absolutely. The origin is a crucial part of our scaling. So our belief is that to really scale this, and by scale, we mean many, many thousands of vehicles, tens of thousands, that you need a purpose-built vehicle to do that. And purpose-built is not just about removing the steering wheel and removing the pedals. It's about fundamentally re-architecting the vehicle. It means that this vehicle, most owned vehicles, they are designed to be owned. They're designed to be sat in your garage for a vast majority of the time and maybe last up to 200, maybe a stretch 300,000 miles. And those are the economics of owned vehicles, and they make sense for owned. But when you're deploying at the scale we're deploying at, and with the utilization that we hope to have in these markets, then the vehicle fundamentally drives a lot about the experience and the cost of the experience. So the Origin lasting 1 million miles, being that sort of level of reliability, plus just the amazing customer experience of the Origin itself, is just absolutely key for us to go into these markets and deliver the sort of unit economics and the experience that we're really looking to do. Because we're not here just to take a human comparative product, same cost, same experience, and just do it a little faster than the human equivalents. This thing should be, and absolutely must be, substantially better than the human equivalent. It has to be cheaper, it has to be better, it has to be more comfortable, smoother, better ETAs, better pickup times, better drop-offs, all that sort of stuff. And that's the Origin is playing a key role in that.
What will the passenger experience be like in the Origin? We'll say, welcome, Oliver, I'm Origin. What will that experience be like?
It's somewhat similar. I mean, so I was very lucky to go for a fully autonomous ride yesterday in the Origin. And I've seen the vehicle a number of times and seen it autonomous. But seeing the full experience end to end really hammered home a bunch of different things for me. So firstly, when people see this vehicle on the streets, it will catch your eye. Like, no doubt about it. It just looks different than any other vehicle that you've ever seen. And this, to me, is actually a signal that this future that we've all been hoping for has arrived. Like, you see this thing and you feel like you're living in the Jetsons. Like, genuinely, it feels that special and that futuristic. So firstly, just the shape, the styling of the vehicle, it feels like the future has arrived. It's very fitting for self-driving. The second thing is that as soon as those doors open, and it's a very special experience when these doors part and you see this cabin because there's no steering wheel, no pedals, the first thing you notice is how spacious it is. When we've all become accustomed to the dimensions of a car, and they're usually pretty tight, right? You get in, your knees are kind of cramped in lots of ways. Maybe the headroom is not so great. Like, we're all used to that. And when you see or feel, when you get into an Origin, you'll just feel like you're in this first class experience. Like, all of a sudden you have all of this extra room. So, two people facing opposing sides of the Origin, sitting facing each other, can actually fully extend their legs without touching. And that to me is huge, because that means that everyone can feel as relaxed as they want to be in this thing and have all the space they want to do so. So that's the second thing that's really noteworthy, the space. The third thing is the comfort of the vehicle. So it's just comfortable beyond space to be in. The seats are awesome. The ride is extra smooth, takes turns very nicely, accelerates very nicely, brakes very nicely, all things that when you can't see a steering wheel, you need to think about. And then there is just the experience of it. You mentioned voice. So the welcoming, the screens that you have, the lighting in the vehicle, the buttons, like it all feels very different than your traditional car experience. And these are all things that have been nailed in the Origin.
When you're inside the Origin, do we get to the point where you eventually put conversational AI and could say, "Hi, Origin, please book me a dinner reservation. Hi, Origin, please book me a concert ticket." Are we going to get there eventually?
If you'd have asked me a year ago, I would have been very negative on this because, hey, Siri, Google Assistant, they haven't felt to have found like compelling use cases yet beyond just like automation in your house or whatever. But as we've seen these large language models just demonstrate really impressive performance and being able to be conversed with, I think there's definitely interesting applications. The most interesting thing to me about these new large language models is that they can have context for the environment in which you are also in. So, for example, for the Origin, I would love to be able to tell the origin, park under that tree on the right, because it's a really hot day and I want the origin to be under some shade while I wait for a friend who I'm picking up. And, Siri or these other assistants would have no idea what you meant by tree on the right? Like there's no context. But these large language models that have access to the camera feeds on the vehicle, they would understand, okay, like I can put two and two together. The pickup or the drop off rather would be on the right under that tree in the shade. And thus the passenger would be more comfortable. So yeah, it's something we definitely think a lot about, how you can deliver a sort of control experience, because there is an absence of a steering wheel, right? So how do customers have that sense of control that they used to have? And that's something we think a lot about.
Do you also think about unique rider experiences in certain cities, perhaps if it's South by Southwest in Austin, or if it's, I've said this before on many podcasts, I think Prashanti was on this one, a Giants baseball game, perhaps it has it integrated with the San Francisco Giants or in the 49ers. Are you looking at potentially creating unique rider experiences in select cities where you operate?
So we definitely have a smaller version of this today. So, if you use Cruise in San Francisco versus Austin, you'll see in the app and the tablet that there are just nods to each city. So you'll see in the app if you're in San Francisco, the Golden Gate Bridge in one of our images within the app. And this is definitely something we want to do more of, this kind of embracing of the city we're in and this kind of like localization, I guess, of the experience. There's definitely opportunities to do more, though, around more temporary events and things like that. And this is where self-driving cars can really shine, again, because the consistency is there and it has this total understanding of who it's picking up, the experience that should be presented to that person. It really can get very personalized, and that's definitely an opportunity for sure.
And personalization builds loyalty with your customers. If you're going to have a personal profile on there and it knows they like a temperature or a certain type of music, you're going to build that loyalty there. You're expanding globally now with your partner Honda. You're actively testing in Japan. Different cultures, different customs in Japan. Will the vehicles adapt to those local cultures and customs?
Yes. I mean, first and foremost is driving behaviors, right? And I mean, in the US, there are just distinct driving behaviors across the country, right? People drive differently in Florida than they do California, than they do Pittsburgh, than they do any location. So this is, again, a test of our self-driving technology's generalizability. Can we take a technology that has been built in the US and take it to a market like Japan and have it drive on the other side of the road and be able to handle that? And again, the answer is yes, we've been able to do that. Then there is parts of the experience which are fundamentally different. So, if you go to Indonesia or Japan or China, the rideshare experience, the way that people use rideshare apps is, again, fundamentally different than in the US. People expect different things from these services. They expect to pay for these things differently. They expect the customer support experience to be different. And they expect the value from these things to be different. So that's something that we are aware of. It's not something that we've been able to dedicate too much time to just yet. But that's why we're also partnered with Honda. The reason we're partnered with Honda is because they understand that market deeply. You'll have seen in the release of the driverless tests we're doing in Japan that there's a big Honda logo on the side. And there's a reason for that. It's because Honda is the company deploying these vehicles in Japan. So that will be hugely beneficial for us. They have all that experience and we'll provide the tools for them to really make that experience awesome.
Does the Honda logo on the vehicles help build trust with the Japanese?
I got to imagine. I don't know what, Chevrolet's brand is like in Japan. I honestly don't. But I just have to imagine Honda is more powerful because it's a company that's literally built there, right? So I think that will be hugely powerful for us. And hey, it's a bit of an interesting model for us to take to other geographers as well to kind of bootstrap these markets.
It's powerful, but the most powerful thing that's going to happen, I'm not going to give a timeline on it, but what's going to happen, I'll use the word soon, You're going to put the Origin into commercial operations. In my opinion, the entire AV industry is going to take a giant leap forward. Thoughts?
I agree. I think there is a moment soon to well, one of the things I feel in autonomous vehicles is that people have extrapolated from the prior progress as to how fast this is going to happen in future, which sounds logical, right? Of course, you'd use history to inform how it's going to go going forward, but I think it's wrong. And the reason it's wrong is because, like I said at the very beginning, I've been in this space for 6.5 years. For the majority of that time, the question has been building a car that's safe enough, that's safer than a human. And that question is just so difficult. So difficult. It was unknown. The solution was unknown. The amount of money you'd need was unknown. Just all of this stuff was really unknown. And then it was answered with a definitive yes. Now that question is not the one that people spend all the time working on. So you can't use that time period of solving that question to inform how fast this stuff is going to scale. So the truth is that the scale that we're starting to see in autonomous vehicles is going to take lots of people by surprise because, again, in their minds, their mental model is, oh, it's going to take a few decades to get to my city, right? Or it won't be in my lifetime in this country. That may bear out, I guess, but the truth is this stuff is going way faster than that safety question was answered. So the fact we've gone from 1 city driverless operations to 3 cities after just deploying for a year, and the plans I see for this year, next year, a few years beyond that, this stuff is going to take people by surprise. And the origin is really key to that level of growth that we're going to have.
Is this all because of the continuous learning machine that's allowing Cruise to scale as fast as it is?
That's definitely one of the technologies behind the scenes that's really important. One of the things, somewhat, I guess, well, regrettably and non-regrettably, using Twitter like I do sometimes, it attracts conversation from, folks that are really big fans of Tesla or other car companies. And one of the things I hear a lot about from these folks is that, hey, Tesla's built a generalizable solution, and hey, Cruise has built this kind of glorified train, right? That it needs to stay on its rails, and if it deviates from the rails, then bad things are going to happen. And that's just not true. That's not how this stuff works. I can understand why people sort of think that and how people attribute LiDAR to staying on the rails and HD maps and things like that. But the truth is it's very different. And by building, and this is what Cruise has, by building this generalizable technology that can be deployed in multiple markets, handle multiple weather conditions across multiple vehicle platforms, multiple different applications, again, this is the sort of stuff that's going to take people absolutely by surprise because this stuff can scale. And it doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean it's not incredibly challenging to do so. But this technology is not it definitely can scale a lot faster than people think.
And that's a good thing. And that's a positive thing. Yep. Your Twitter is very interesting. You've been tweeting a lot about AI. What are your thoughts on all the breakthroughs that have been occurring lately with the Chat GPT? It just seems that there's one breakthrough after another in AI, and you've been there documenting it.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a fascinating time. Again, I think in any sort of industry that is going through the growth that machine learning is going through, it's important to have a sense over time and to understand how we got to this place. Because, we've all seen in other industries how they've, got to a point in time where there feels to be an inflection point and it's utilized poorly. Crypto perhaps being one case study there. For ML, this is a space that has been actively worked on for decades now, right? Machine learning, artificial intelligence is not some overnight success, right? This is a field where people have been tirelessly working in for decades and decades and decades. And honestly, what really drew me to self-driving originally was this sense that it was a machine learning problem. And it was, in fact, the most cutting edge application of machine learning. It's real time, it's safety critical. It's very complex. Driving is very difficult. And over the last 6.5 years of being in this space, what I've observed is that many of the things that self-driving car companies developed to solve self-driving have filtered down into other applications. So when I look at the machine learning infrastructure behind companies like Cruise, some of the stuff we built at Voyage 2, lots of those technologies have filtered to help other companies. So when we think about training large models, well, which companies were training large models 4 or 5 years ago? It was the self-driving car companies, right? Because they needed to build these crazy cool object detection models or semantic segmentation models. And now that same technology of ability to train these large models is translating to things in large language models like we see with ChatGPT-3. So anyway, I think it's important to have this longer term view of things to understand how we got to this place. And the reason we got to this place is because there was a whole bunch of really awesome people across not just self-driving, a variety of other industries, building the kind of foundations for this moment. Then the question is, do we utilize this moment well? Right? Again, this is where I go back to crypto. And if we utilize it well, then the future will be amazing, right? We'll have all of these crazy cool technologies, all these crazy cool pieces of software, hardware, all that have artificial intelligence baked into it. We'll see humanoid robots. We'll, of course, see self-driving cars. We'll see the future we were all promised. But it can go the other way. You can absolutely see artificial intelligence a scenario where it is not utilized well. It's utilized for bad things, horrible things. It's utilized for profit instead of for the betterment of people and society. And there's many cautionary tales about this. This is something we absolutely have to take seriously. One of the key things to note, I find, is that I angel invest sometimes in artificial intelligence companies. And in particular, in recent months, there's been this boom of companies starting artificial intelligence startups. And it's quite easy to tell the difference between a founder who is really dedicated to this technology, who wants to make it happen, and a tourist. And I say this in a way that I mean folks that are jumping in purely to ride the wave of excitement. And I'm all for people jumping into new industries. The motives are important though, right? If people are jumping in because they think it's cool and because they think it has a utility, that's great. If people are jumping in because they think there's a quick buck to be made, then that's a red flag. And again, in crypto, that's what happened ultimately, right? And crypto's not gone and dead or whatever, but like there was too many folks that jumped in to make a buck instead of actually solving real problems. So long ramble, but this is an important moment for AI. And if we do it right, we'll have wonderful things.
There's always good actors that will do it right to the benefit. What's next for AI?
Yeah, I wish I could answer that question. I mean, the things that I see in self-driving and the things that we are seeing from companies like OpenAI, DeepMind, etc. These are the thing. I was talking with a friend a few days ago. We have all the pieces of really compelling technologies. So, we have the startups out there that can replicate voices, generative voice, right? You can give a sample of your voice and it can generate a voice. We have, of course, these large language models that can effectively be talked with and provide knowledge of things. We have, if you look at a Boston Dynamics or many of the humanoid robot companies out there, we have these shells of these robots that can do crazy things. We, of course, have cutting edge computer vision. Computers can understand what they see. I saw a company recently that is able to smell things, as weird as that sounds. So machines will be able to smell things and understand those things. So all these sensors, all of these bits and pieces are coming together. I think the future, in the next 5-10 years there's going to be a handful of companies that piece all of these things together, right? And build really cool stuff. And I'm not just talking about like humanoid robots and self-driving cars, but people that piece all these crazy components together and just find really awesome, compelling ways to build products that are very different than what we have today.
As we have AI breakthroughs, will Cruise look to incorporate them into either the product or the operations if they can create value for the company and for your riders?
Absolutely. I mean, Cruise, because of the machine learning infrastructure that we do have, is very uniquely positioned to very quickly embrace machine learning in any application. And Cruise is not alone in this, right? Like you go to many of the major artificial intelligence companies, they have the ability to incorporate ML into many of the different challenges. So, some examples like customer support. How do we ensure that customers get the best possible customer support experience using artificial intelligence? There's applications for ML in fleet tooling. How do we ensure that we perfectly optimize our fleet to be deployed in the perfect locations for passenger pickups? And a number of these are being worked on and have been deployed in certain cases, but we still have a ways to go. But it's definitely, you can see if you squint, almost all of Cruise and the tooling we build, the apps that we ship to customers, the vehicles, there's going to be a common thread of artificial intelligence throughout, for sure.
There's great things coming. Oliver, putting this all together, looking back to our ride in 2019, did you ever see yourself scaling an AV product across the globe then?
In 2019, no, it felt a long way away, honestly. And I think the whole industry, 2019 was a pretty interesting year because that was a year that was a bit depressing for the industry, right? It was the year that a year or two after the Uber crash, the momentum felt like it had started to slow in the industry in terms of just what people were talking about externally. Fundraising kind of slowed down a little bit for the industry. So it was a rather tough year. But I think what I did feel confident on is that there would be a time when in a place like San Francisco, a person could jump into a self-driving car and drive from point A to point B. And there'd be no driver in the front seat and people's minds would be blown. I did feel confident about that. Now seeing this sort of moment happen and then the acceleration of what's possible after it, now I absolutely have that confidence that you can take this to multiple, not just multiple cities, but multiple countries, multiple continents even, and make this a global phenomenon instead of just this kind of city-centric phenomenon. So yeah, it's one of those things. The year 2019, it was always a bit of an optimistic, pessimistic year, right? You want to retain that optimism because you're literally building a self-driving car company and you're seeing really cool stuff happening, real progress. But there's also lots of doubts starting to occur. So yeah, definitely a challenging year for sure.
That was the year AUVSI was in Orlando, and there was a lot of doubts now, but there's doubts in the past. Nobody doubted Cruise.
Well, one addition, actually, just very quickly, is I think it's important, and I correct myself on this a lot more recently, to just smooth out emotions throughout year to year. Because as a startup founder in 2019, like you're just on, you're emotionally on all the time, right? Like you're feeling waves of emotion, up, down, left, right, like crazy. And it can really exacerbate any particular situation, being so up and down and emotional about these things. Now, and if I look back, in the scheme of autonomous vehicles, we launched fully driverless at Cruise in 2021. It was only 2 years after 2019, right? And again, the whole industry was going through a bit of a lull in 2019, Cruise included. So it was only 2 years. Now, if we actually zoom out to where AVs will be, I don't know, 2030, 2040, right? Like I'm sure AV, and I'm making this up, 2026 might go through a bit of a bump at some point, right? Like it's bound to happen. And in 2026, like we got to weather it, we got to calm down. Like this stuff matters, this stuff is needed, and just relax about the situation, because all of this will be worth it when you zoom out and see the scale that this stuff will be at in the future.
That's why we have to stay focused and stay positive. It goes a very long way. Don't get bogged down in the day-to-day. Focus on the big picture and all the good that you're doing and all the mobility that you're going to eventually give to millions of individuals around the world. I've been dying to know this, and it's on a light note. The Cruise AVs, they have cute names. You have Poppy, you have other names. How do they get their names?
So we originally started with employees naming them. We have, from time to time, let members of the public name these vehicles, customers name these vehicles. And the truth is we often talk about this because we're, as we mentioned, about to scale up the Origin. Should we keep the names for the Origin, right? And we have decided to keep the names. And the reason being is that it's very clear we found this kind of lightning in a bottle type effect where people, every time they film their experience in a Cruise AV, they don't refer to the AV as a Cruise AV. They give it the name. They call it Poppy. I think it's very rare in robotics and artificial intelligence that you find people actually building a sense of identity around what you've built. Typically, again, you kind of refer to it as the Roomba, right? Or whatever the brand might be. But the truth is, by giving these names, it just humanizes these vehicles and just gives it a little more sense of lightheartedness, which I think is important in AV. So yeah, anyway, look, the short answer to your question is we name them internally. We've found ways for customers to name these, and we'll be scaling this going forward because it's just really cool.
as you humanize the product, you're building trust with the public. And that's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
It is. And I feel like it's existential, to be blunt. Like if the way I think about this today is that customers in San Francisco have this high sort of early adopter tolerance, right? They want to adopt technologies really quickly. And that's awesome. And that's one of the key reasons why San Francisco makes sense. But there are people, not just outside of San Francisco, but inside San Francisco, who don't know what to think of self-driving cars. They don't trust them yet, right? And what it's going to take to get those people to trust self-driving cars is knowing someone else who has trusted self-driving cars. And it's important that we get those folks, the early adopters in any market, to ride. And if they have a great experience, a wonderful experience, they tweet about it, they WhatsApp to a friend about it, whatever it takes, that will help those folks that don't have trust to eventually trust this stuff. But if you don't deliver that great first experience to the early adopters, then the folks who don't trust you, they will never experience it, right? They'll never even want to try it. So that's why for us, it's important to give that first group this really amazing experience, because that will help build trust. And ultimately, that's what will make us successful.
That's why you have to build a great product and keep improving your product. Unlike transportation, when the product goes down, the cruise product goes up.
Yep.
We talked about 2019. You gave a 2026 outlook. But in your opinion, what is the future of the autonomous vehicle industry? I personally think it's very bright.
Oh, it's incredibly bright, especially now. So, what I believe, if I were a listener of this and I'm in a major city in the US, lots of folks, if you're outside of San Francisco, Austin, and Phoenix, might be wondering when this stuff is going to finally arrive in your city. And the truth is, with the scale that Cruise is deploying at and the scale that Waymo and others are likely to deploy at, this stuff is going to arrive far quicker than people think. And, at some point in the near future, where if you're in one of these cities, you're going to get an email and it will say, Cruise has arrived, right? Sign up now. And if people are thinking that's decades away, they're wrong. It's going to absolutely happen much, much quicker than that. And it's going to be really I don't know. This is the reason I have so much excitement about this, because this stuff is just so special and so futuristic and so useful and valuable to so many people. And I just want as many people as humanly possible to experience this. And the idea that many people are going to experience it soon, that's just super energizing.
You could change the email title to "The Future Has Arrived" when you get to their cities.
Eventually, the future, we won't have to talk about the future arriving, because it will, like you said, it will just have arrived, right? We won't be able to use that line anymore.
Well, at the way you're scaling, the future is going to get to many cities around the world faster than we know it. Oliver, it's been wonderful to catch up. I really enjoyed this insightful conversation.
So firstly, thank you, Grayson. Thank you for being an awesome advocate for autonomous vehicles. It really matters. Secondly, I hope you will try the product. I hope you will get to experience a Cruise autonomous vehicle, because it's just a wonderful experience. And then I hope you share your feedback with me. I'd love to learn what we can do to improve what you liked about the experience. And I hope you tell your friends.
As Oliver says, take a ride in a fully autonomous Cruise vehicle. It's the future, and soon is to be standard, because the future is bright, the future is autonomous, and the future is Cruise. Oliver, thank you so much for coming on the Road to Autonomy today.
Thank you, Grayson.
Thank you for listening to the Road to Autonomy podcast. If you've enjoyed listening, please rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Want to get in touch? Follow us on Twitter @Road to Autonomy, or email podcast@brulteco.com. The Road to Autonomy is produced by Brulte & Company. The views and opinions expressed on the Road to Autonomy podcast do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of Brulte & Company. The content discussed on this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be taken as legal, tax, investment, or business advice.